The Lajat, also spelled Lejat, Lajah, el-Leja, el-Leja, is the largest lava field in southern Syria, spanning some 900 square kilometers. Located about 50 kilometers southeast of Damascus, the Lajat borders the Hauran plain to the west and the foothills of Jabal al-Druze to the south. The average elevation is between 600 and 700 meters above sea level, with the highest volcanic cone being 1,159 meters above sea level, receiving little annual rainfall. The Lajat is largely barren, though there are scattered patches of arable land in some of its depressions. The region has been known by a number of names throughout its history, including Argob in the Hebrew Bible and Trachonitis by the Greeks, a name under which it is mentioned in the Gospel of Luke. Long inhabited by Arab groups, it saw development under the Romans, who built a road through the center of the region connecting it with the empire's province of Syria. The pagan cults that predominated in Trachonitis during the Roman and pre-Roman era persisted through much of the Byzantine era, until the 6th century when Christianity became dominant. During Byzantine rule, Trachonitis experienced a massive building boom with churches, homes, bathhouses and colonnades being constructed in numerous villages, whose inhabitants remained largely Arab. At some point the region was abandoned, but repopulated by refugees from other parts of Syria during the 13th century Mongol invasions. It was then that the region gained its modern Arabic name, al-Leja, which means the refuge. During early Ottoman rule in the 16th century, the Lajat contained numerous grain-growing villages, but by the 17th century, the region was all but abandoned. Local Bedouin tribes, such as the Sulit, increasingly used the region for grazing their flocks, and as migrants from Mount Lebanon began settling the area in the early 19th century. Today, the population is mixed, with Druze inhabiting its central and eastern areas, and Muslims and Melkites living in villages along its western edge. Etymology. Lajat's ancient name, Trachonitis, signifies the land associated with the Trachon, a rugged stony tract. There are two volcanic districts south and east of Damascus, to which the Greeks supplied this name. That to the northwest of the mountain of Bashan is called in Arabic el-Leja, which means the refuge or asylum. Lajat is roughly triangular in shape, with its apex to the north. The sides are about 25 miles in length, and a base about 20. Lajat lies in the midst of an arable and pastoral country, and although it could never have supported a large population, it has probably always been inhabited. Geography. Lajat is situated in southeastern Syria, spanning a triangle-shaped area between the 45-kilometer Isra-Jabal line to the south to the vicinity of Barak, 48 kilometers north of the Isra-Jabal line and 50 kilometers south of Damascus. Its northern border is roughly marked by the Wadi al-Ajab Gorge, which separates it from the Ghouta countryside of Damascus. It is bordered to the east by the Ard al-Bithynia region, to the southeast by Jabal al-Druze, in the south by the Nukra, to the southwest by the Golan Heights and to the northwest by Jada. Topography. Lajat's average elevation is between 600 and 700 meters above sea level, and it is higher than the surrounding plains. Many of its volcanic cones are higher than 1,000 meters above sea level, with the highest just west of Jabal at 1,159 meters. In general, the volcanic cones and mounds rise 20 to 30 meters above the lava fields. Much of Lajat is largely covered by gray, disintegrated lava fields that forming jagged basalt boulders, though there are some areas of smoother, rocky ground punctured with holes. The holes were formed from gas bubbles caused by cooling lava that flowed over the uneven landscape. Among the mostly barren landscape are depressions with far less rocky ground than the rest of the Lajat. The depressions are called Kar in Arabic and have average diameters of 100 meters. The depressions are likely the result of earlier volcanic eruptions. The depressions represented scattered patches of arable land among lava and fewer larger areas of fertile ground. The few wadis of the Lajat are generally shallow and broad. Even fewer than the wadis are deep fissures that form caves or reservoirs. Water sources, springs and underground water sources in Lajat are scarce and most water is supplied by cisterns. Shortages of water are particularly severe during the summer months. While during the Lajat's ancient history, its inhabitants stored water from winter rainfall in reservoirs built near homes. By the early 20th century, these reservoirs had long fallen into disrepair. Thus, by the modern era, every village contained rectangular cisterns to store rainwater, which served as the main water supply. History. Antiquity. Early history. In ancient times, Trachonitis included the regions of Lajat and the Tulul as-Safa to its east. For much of the 1st and 2nd millenniums BCE, the region lacked political significance and was influenced by the Damascus-based Aramaeans and the Israelites. Trachonitis was annexed by the Seleucid Empire in the 2nd century BCE. During this period, the region was a frontier zone between the southern Nabateans and northwestern Iturians, both Arab groupings. Roman period. The Roman Empire conquered Syria and in 24 BCE put Trachonitis, then inhabited by nomadic marauders and cattle herders who lived its caves and depressions, under the authority of Herod the Great. To keep watch over the people of Trachonitis, Herod built the town of Ira. During the Roman era, Trachonitis inhabitants gradually became settled and gained exemption from taxation. The Romans built a road that passed through the center of Trachonitis and connected with the Roman road system in Syria. Several towns and villages sprung up in Trachonitis between the 1st and 4th centuries CE. Many of these settlements had theaters, colonnades and temples. There are almost 20 sites in the Lajat that contain ruins and inscriptions from the Roman period, including Philippopolis and Sha'ara. The town of Zorava was the political center of Trachonitis and its earliest inhabitants were Nabatean Arabs. The main Nabatean tribes of the town were the Samanoi and the Magdalenoi. The inhabitants practiced a Roman pagan cult as early as 161 CE. In the 3rd century, they built numerous houses and baths from basaltic stone, and the town had a relatively urban character. Byzantine period. The Romans were succeeded by the Byzantine Empire in Syria during the mid-4th century CE. For the following 3 centuries, Trachonitis saw a huge uptick in settlement and building activity. Among the major Byzantine-era settlements were Bursa, Zorava, Jiran, Sur, Deir al-Juwani, Rimia, al-Zaytun, Shakra and Hauran. There are at least 30 sites in the Lajat with ruins tracing back to the Byzantine era. The Byzantine era saw the expansion of Christianity in the regions surrounding the Lajat, but their archaeological evidence indicates that Christianity only affected a few Lajat villages, particularly those along its southwestern edges, until the mid-6th century. One of the earliest known Christian communities in Trachonitis was Sur, which had a Christian edifice dated to 458. Zorava was the cosmopolitan capital of Byzantine Trachonitis. Its pagan temple was replaced by the martyrium of St. George in 515 and the town became a bishopric in 542. There are no earlier indications of a Christian presence in Zorava. In addition to its Arab inhabitants, the town had a Greek-speaking community, made up mostly of army veterans, who themselves were likely ethnic Arabs recruited from the province. By the mid-6th century, the Arabs of Trachonitis had largely become Christians, with the cult of St. Elijah being predominant. The cult of St. Sergius was dominant in Trachonitis neighboring regions. In Hauran, a bilingual Arabic-Greek inscription dated from 568 describes the construction of a martyrium built by a local Arab Phylak. Middle Ages. A region's modern name, Lajah, was first recorded during the Middle Ages, and the region was only mentioned by later Arab geographers, indicating that it had likely been abandoned prior to the 13th century. In the early 13th century, during Ayyubid rule, the Lajat was said to contain a large population and numerous villages and fields, according to Syrian geographer Yaqut al-Hamawi. According to historian H. Gaber, the Lajat was likely settled by refugees from other parts of Syria due to the pressures of the Mongol invasions. There are at least 13 sites in the Lajat that contain Islamic era ruins, most of which date to the 13th century. Ottoman era. The Lajat contained some populated places during early Ottoman rule, which began in 1517, but other than a few Christian-populated villages along its western periphery, the region was abandoned by at least the 17th century. The Lajat was settled by Druze migrants, mostly from Wadi al-Taim and Mount Lebanon, in the late 18th century and throughout the 19th century. Prior to that, the Lajat was dominated by the Sulit, a Bedouin tribe. Two Druze villages, al-Zaytin and Laja, existed in the interior of the Lajat in the early 19th century. Major Druze settlement began in the aftermath of the 1860 Mount Lebanon Civil War. By 1862, Dama, Salakid, Ahira, Al-Qasa, Sumaid and Hauran, all in the heart of Lajat, were settled by Druze from the Azam, Shafan and Hamada families, who were newcomers to the Hauran region. The increasing Druze presence in Lajat led to confrontations with the Sulit tribesmen, their erstwhile allies, against the Ottoman authorities. In June 1868, Ismail al-Atrash led the Druze in the battles with the Sulit, while the prominent Druze clans of al-Hamdin and Bani Amir aligned with the Sulit against the chief rival, the Bani al-Atrash. The Ottoman governor of Damascus, Rashid Pasha, resolved to end the war, and mediated an agreement stipulating a total Druze withdrawal from Lajat. Nonetheless, Druze habitation continued and was principally concentrated on the Lajat's eastern edge and its southern interior, which bordered the Druze heartland of Jabal Hauran. In 1867, the Azam and Halabi families established the villages al-Zabair and al-Sura al-Sajira, both situated at the eastern edge of Lajat, respectively. Between then and 1883, the Murshid families settled Lubain, the Abu Hassan settled Durain and the Shafan settled al-Majadal. Along the Lajat's eastern edge, the Halabi and Bani Amir families settled Jadaliya, al-Matuna, Dakia, Karkala, Haratain, Hazim and al-Sura al-Kabira. Druze activity in the Lajat's northeastern slopes regressed because of the scarcity of water and arable land, but the villages of al-Salmiya, Huqf, Budina, Burq, Araha, Dabib, al-Tayyibar and al-Ramah were established mostly by the Bani Amir, but also by Bani al-Atrash, al-Ghanim and al-Kalani between 1862 and 1883. Modern era. In the early 20th century, the cultivated areas of the Lajat were mostly located in its western and southwestern parts, where soil was cleared of stone and nutrient-rich. Wheat and barley were grown in small quantities, and in the vicinity of some villages were olive, apricot and pear trees. Other than that, the region was treeless. Other vegetation included several patches wildflowers throughout narrow cracks between between the rocks of the Lajat. Lajat was designated a World Biosphere Reserve by UNESCO in 2009. Population. Most of the inhabited areas of the Lajat are along its fringes, with only a few scattered villages in the interior. The interior villages lay in relatively stone-less depressions. Most villages were built among the Lajat's ancient ruins. Historically, the population of the Lajat consisted of nomadic and semi-nomadic Bedouin tribesmen, peasants from the Hauran plain who occasionally used it as a refuge, and beginning in the 19th century, Druze from Jabal al-Druze who settled it and/or occasionally used it for refuge or to exploit resources. The Lajat is a grazing area for sheep, goats and camels. By the early 20th century, about 5,000 semi-nomadic Bedouin from the Sulit tribe and a smaller population of Bedouin from the Fezza tribe inhabited the Lajat. Alongside them were about 10,000 Druze peasants who lived along the eastern and southeastern edges and to a lesser extent in the interior, populated places in the Lajat maps. Bibliography